have a 2001 Ford F350 with the 7.3 diesel, and the power steering pump seems to be not working once the engine goes to idle. And so basically when you give it a little RPM, the steering comes back to life, and idle, it's really hard to turn this truck. So procedures for replacing this pump is not as difficult as it looks, other than you have to remove a little bit of hardware to be able to get to it. So the first thing you're going to need to do is pull the belt off. You're going to need to remove this alternator, and then there's this bracket right here, and this bracket is what that pump is bolted to. Now you have to remove the bracket so you can get to everything. There are 3 lines that go into this pump, and we'll take a look at a new pump here in a second so you understand what we're talking about. And there's also a pulley that you will also have to remove the pulley as well. Now my recommendations are to pull the lines off and pull this bracket out, and then remove the pulley, and then pull the pump off the back. And that's what we're going to do today. So this is what the pump is going to look like. And basically you're going to see this part is plastic, and it's a pretty tough plastic, so you're not going to break it, but you're still going to be careful with it. And there is a rubber hose that connects to the bottom, or it's a rubber fitting on the end of the hose. The same thing, there's one that fits on the top, and they're nothing more than slip-on hoses. And then there's a fitting right here that we're going to have to take off as well. Other than that, the only thing that holds this pump on is 3 mounting holes right here in the front. Removing the belt is relatively simple. Just put your ratchet down here on a tensioner, and then you're just going to pull it on over, basically counterclockwise, and that'll loosen it up. Now I have a funny looking double-ended ratchet, so don't get confused here, but my ratchet allows me to put a pipe on top, so I can be a little bit more leverage and cheat. So once you pull this towards you, that'll loosen the belt up, and you can pull the belt off. Once you remove these 3 bolts, which I believe are 13s, you're going to take this alternator and just lay it over backwards on the top of all of this stuff up here, just to get it out of the way. Once you pull this hose off, you're going to have to reach down in there with a 18mm wrench and pull this fitting off the side. You can kind of see it right to the left of the wrench. And then there is one more rubber hose that goes on the bottom of this, and you're not going to be able to pull that off until you remove this bracket. Now I went one step further and pulled the air box out. Now I had an aftermarket air box, so it was a little bit larger than factory, but I've basically pulled this out so you can have a better look to see how this sits in here and where the fittings are on this pump. So if you look in the back here, you can see, barely, that is a rubber hose that slips off that nipple, and this also gives you a better view of how this metal fitting works. So once you get those off, you're ready to remove the rest of this bracket and pull this whole thing out, and then get your puller and pull this pulley off and remove the pump. Now that being said, there are guys out there that do this while it's on the engine, and you can do that. If you can fit your puller up here in the front and pull this pulley off, remove those 3 bolts, this will come right off, and you can swap it out with a new one. But we're going to pull the whole bracket off. Quite frankly, it's not that big of a deal to do so. So here's the bracket laying in the bed of my pickup truck, and you can see where the 4 holes were for the bolts that held this bracket on. They were pretty easy to get to, and not a big deal really. I also pulled the pulley off of the pump already using a pulley puller, so I recommend you get one of those or rent one if you don't have one of those. And now we're just going to take the 3 bolts off and then put the new one on. So after you get the pulley back on and you get it bolted back to the bracket, you just remount your bracket. It was basically 4 bolts that hold it on, and go ahead and put your belt back on. Also, you want to hook up your lines. So remember, there were 3 lines. There's a line on the bottom, which you can't really see. It's back here. Then there was this steel line on the side, and the kit usually comes with a new seal, or if you bought a new pump like I did, it'll come with a new seal. It's basically a Teflon seal that goes on here, so make sure you do that so you don't have any leaks. Put your top line back on, put all of your hose clamps on, and don't forget to put fluid into the reservoir. And remember, these trucks, specifically the 7.3s, they don't have a standard fluid requirement. They use a basically transmission fluid. Mercon, I think, is what Ford recommends. I'm going to use Mobil 1 synthetic ATF, but you guys need to use whatever the manufacturer recommends or whatever you're comfortable with. Another thing that you're going to want to do is flush again afterwards. Now I flush before I put the new pump on, and then I flush again after the new pump's been on for a very short period of time. And what this does is it gets rid of any contaminants that the old pump may have put into the system. You just never know. There might have been pieces of metal or something that came off the old pump, or over the years people's used different oils. It's just best to get all of that out of there. So make sure you flush one last time and put a good high quality transmission fluid back in it. And now you're ready to put all the other parts and pieces. In my case, the air cleaner needs to go back on and put my battery back in. You'll start to trek up. You'll turn the steering wheel all the way to the right, all the way to the left, all the way to the right, all the way to the left, and eventually you'll bleed it and keep checking the reservoir to make sure that you didn't use all the fluid while you were trying to bleed it. And then you're good to go. So not that big of a deal. I would say, probably guess on a couple hours if you've never done anything like this before, maybe 3. It's not terrible. And as always, if you like these types of videos or the do-it-yourself types of videos, please like and subscribe. Take a look at some of my other videos. You might find something you yourself might want to build, or maybe I've repaired something in the past that you might need to repair as well.